bring this meeting to order, ladies and gentlemen. We're trying to move right along. I guess I got it all tonight. We got prayer, pledge of allegiance, and being over the meeting, so maybe we can survive. Okay, just join me, audience and members and friends, for a moment of silence, please. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, council members, before we get started, we're going to let Miss Logan present the STARS presentation.
Good evening. Thank you, council members. And tonight I'm pleased to present our latest star for this month. And our star this month is our third part-timer. So out of 11 stars, we've had 3 part-timers, which I think really speaks to the quality of employees that we have here at the city of Murfreesboro. Our star tonight is the first star to be recognized from the Parks and Recreation Department, and she is Ms. Jennifer Joins. Jennifer works with our fitness and wellness in Parks and Recreation. She is known for helping runners achieve their dreams, or triathletes achieve their dreams. In fact, her nomination was from someone who has worked with her and said that Jennifer adds great value to our city by developing new ways to get members of our community involved in getting more fit. I started as a beginning runner with Jennifer's running group at SportsCom a couple of years ago. Up to that point, I had never ran more than a mile. Since then, under her encouragement and guidance, I've run multiple half marathons, and over this year, she has just developed a program for beginners wanting to do triathlons. I would have never attempted this on my own, but with her encouragement and hard work to develop this program, I'm now training and enjoying triathlons. Until a couple of months ago, I did not even know how to swim, and I did not own a road bike, but now I do, thanks to Jennifer. And then it goes on to say just what a wonderful motivator in the wellness program Jennifer is. And I have heard nothing but good things over the years about Jennifer and what she does with runners to get them developed. And 3 years ago, I ran my first half marathon here at the city of Murfreesboro, which that's coming up very soon. And I know that it can be extremely intimidating if you haven't done it on your own, and people like Jennifer are very imperative to those of us who want to try to take care of ourselves and just do something that we never thought we could do before. And she's just a great motivator and just a wonderful asset to our city. When I told Lanny Goodwin, her Parks and Recreation Director, that she was awarded the star, his response back to me was, I wish I had 2 dozen like Jennifer. And I think that probably speaks to everything it needs to say about just what a great asset she is for us in our fitness and wellness programs here at the city of Murfreesboro. So with that, Mr. Goodwin would like to say a couple words about Jennifer, and then we will present her with her award.
Thank you, Shannon. I started writing down a few things about Jennifer, and my list kept getting longer and longer and longer and longer. And so I thought I would just get up here and tell you that Jennifer is a great employee. She's a joy to be around. You can always see that smile you see right now when you walk into SportsCom. And she always focuses on the customer. You talk about really striving for excellence. It's effortless with Jennifer. I mean, she really tries every day to make every customer that walks through that door happy. And it's a joy to have her in our department. She's worked for us for a little over 7 years. I don't know a day that she's missed a beat as far as being there, being on time, being punctual, being cordial, and just being a joy to work around. Our staff loves her. Our customers love her. You heard what they said about her being a great motivator. You really can't be around Jennifer very long without start feeling the energy that she just displays on the job every day. So I'm not surprised that she was nominated. But I am very, very proud of Jennifer and proud for our department that she's our first recipient. Jennifer?
Jennifer, on behalf of the City of Murfreesboro, we'd like to present you with this month's Star Award. Congratulations. I think Jennifer brought a couple members of her family with her tonight, so if you want to say anything, you're more than welcome, or just introduce them. We'd like to do that.
Yes, thank you. This is my husband, Mark, and my son, my oldest son, Matt. So they are also very helpful. I have to recruit them quite often to run with us because, we need fast runners, and they're my fast runners. But no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It is truly a joy to come to work every day. It's a lot of fun, so it makes it really easy. So thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. All right, council members, next we have our consent agenda. What is your pleasure? Is there anything on that consent agenda that you see that we need to remove?
Move for approval. Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Council members, we have the minutes from September 12, 2013 regular meeting. What is your pleasure?
Move the minutes be adopted as submitted.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Councilman, before we get to the third readings, I want Joseph A. Lott to come up. He has someone he wants to introduce to us.
Mayor and Council, I'm very pleased to introduce to you our new planner. This is Joe Ornelas. Joe comes to us with a master's degree in urban planning. He went to
University of Iowa.
the University of Iowa. He's going to be taking on more and more responsibilities. He's going to become a very familiar face to you, just like myself, Margaret Ann, Matthew, and Robert. So we're very pleased to have him. I feel like I've just got a STARS award when I got him on staff. We're real pleased to have him.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Go Hawkeyes.
Thank you, council members. And Joseph, we're going to do third readings now. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-32 to rezone an area located along South Malloy Lane to heavy industrial H1 district.
Move for approval. Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-33 to rezone areas located along East Main Street and Arnett Street to Highway Commercial CH District. Third reading.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Next, consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-34 amending approximately 18.9 acres of planned unit development PUD district located along Hillwood Drive.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OA-35 annexing an area located along Veterans Parkway and adopt for the same a plan of services.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-36 to zone an area located along Veterans Parkway as Highway Commercial CH District simultaneous with annexation.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-OZ-37 to zone an area located along Veterans Parkway as residential multifamily 16 RM16 district simultaneous with annexation.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
No.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-0-38, amending Chapter 2, Administration, Section 2-10 by adopting a revised procurement code.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 13-0-28, amending Chapter 32, Traffic, Section 32-2101 regarding parking violation penalties.
Move for passage.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. New business. Okay. Pursuant to Resolution 13-OZ-R-39, adopted by the City Council on August 22, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning approximately 0.89 acres located along Oval Heston Lane from General Office OG District to Residential Zero Lot Line RZ District. Decker and Build applicants. Notice of said public hearing was published in the September 8, 2013 issue of a local newspaper. Margaret, I don't know your last name now. You still going by Ely on the emails.
Green.
It's Green,
I got you.
but you can call me Ely as well. I'm both. I haven't abandoned one
Gotcha.
for the other. But our first public hearing this evening, coming to you from the Planning Commission, is to consider a zoning change request for approximately 0.9 acres located north of Oval Heston Lane, just west of St. Andrews Drive. The property is currently zoned OG, which is General Office District Residential, and it was zoned OG at the time of this property's annexation in 2002. The property does lie between the Salem Glen Crossing subdivision to the north, or to the west, and St. Andrews Drive. The owners have made an application to change the zoning from Office General District Residential to RZ, Zero Lot Line Residential District, which is the same zoning classification as the contiguous Salem Glen Crossing subdivision. And it's the intent for the developers to continue that subdivision along this property. It is their desire to develop the property with single-family detached homes that will be an extension of that Salem Glen Crossing subdivision. The Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing and voted unanimously to approve this zoning change request. There were 4 members present the evening of the public hearing. If you have any questions about this, I'd be glad to answer them either before or after the public hearing, but you should conduct a public hearing prior to making your decision regarding the zoning change request from OG to RZ.
All right, council members, do you have any questions of Ms. Green before we get started with the public hearing? All right, if not, I'll open the public hearing for anyone for or against this proposal. Come to the mic, state your name and your address.
Yes, good evening, Vice Mayor Washington, council members. My name is Kevin Gunther with Huddleston Steel, and I'm pleased to be here this evening to represent, along with Mr. Dan Decker, the request for this planned development rezoning. It is a small extension of the existing Salem Glen neighborhood. The developer proposes to add the same quality of single-family residential homes that he has built in other communities in Murfreesboro, and we will be here to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for or against? Anyone? I declare the public hearing closed. Consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13-OZ-39, zoning an area located along Oval Heston Lane to residential zero lot line RZ district. What is your pleasure?
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Okay, item 12, pursuant to Resolution 13-OZ-R-40, adopted by the City Council on August 22, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning approximately 34.9 acres located north of Salem Highway at Kinsale Avenue from single-family residential 15 district to planned residential development PRD district, Old South Properties Incorporated, applicant. Notice of said public hearing was published in the September 8, 2013 issue of a local newspaper. Ms. Green.
Thank you, sir. Our next public hearing is to consider a zoning change request for approximately 35 acres located north of Salem Highway at Kinsale Avenue from its current RS-15 zone, which is single-family residential district, to PRD, Planned Residential District. The subject property is located east of St. Andrews Drive. It is surrounded on the west, north, and east directly by developed subdivisions, and to the south is the undeveloped land zoned RS-15. The application is to rezone the property from RS-15, Single-Family Residential District, to PRD to allow the development of 150 single-family detached dwellings on the property as described in the program book. You should have received a PDF of the program book in the packets, and as well I've couriered a copy of the program book to you so that it would be a little easier to read, since sometimes it can be a little difficult to see the details on your iPads. And so the PRD program is outlined in this program book, and I'll invite Mr. Kevin Gunther up just after my presentation to go through the details of this zoning change request. I would like to point out that when this property was annexed in 2005, there were no development plans for the property, and therefore it came in with its interim zoning of RS-15. That's the zoning classification that we give to properties which are zoned for residential or agricultural purposes in the county that are then annexed and have no request to change the zoning classification. And since that time, there's been no change to the property. The City Council, or the Planning Commission, did consider this matter, and they recommend that you do approve it unanimously. And again, 4 members were present that evening, and all 4 members do recommend that you approve this zoning change request from RS-15 to PRD. At this time, I'll invite Mr. Kevin Gunther to the lectern to go over the details of the program book. If you have any questions at any time, I'd be glad to answer them, and I'll go ahead and...
Once again, good evening, Vice Mayor Washington, City Council members. Pleasure to represent this proposed plan development for Old South Properties. Kevin Gunther with Huddleston Steel. As Ms. Green did a good job indicating, we are fitting in good context with our surrounding neighborhood, both the planned residential and the same type of density of single family that occurs adjacent to our property. As you can see in your pattern book, that's a picture of the St. Andrews Place subdivision immediately to the north of us. That is the same type of product and lot that this developer is proposing on this property. The only difference being that those lots are 60-foot in width. The planned development we are proposing is 55-foot in width. I'd also like to point out that the architectural quality that's being presented in this plan development is a commitment on the developer's part. They do commit to a full masonry product front of either stone brick or cementitious sided boarding, and also are committing to a quality landscape package fronting the street. We believe this is a good plan. It fits in context with its surrounding neighborhood, not only for the style of homes and the type of homes, but our street pattern and our sidewalks committed to both sides of the street will provide a good connection for both vehicular and pedestrian access. We respectfully ask for your approval of this plan development this evening, and I will be here to answer questions if you have them. Thank you.
All right, council members, do you have any questions for Mr. Gunther or Ms. Green before we open the public hearing? All right, seeing none, we will open the public hearing. Anyone for or against this proposal, come to the microphone and please give us your name and address. For or against? All right, seeing none, I close the public hearing. Consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13-OZ-40 to rezone an area located north of Salem Highway at Kinsale Avenue to Planned Residential Development, PRD District.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Item 13, pursuant to Resolution 13-OA-R-41, adopted by the City Council on August 22, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider annexing approximately 3.11 acres located along Elam Road and consider for same a plan of services. Jerry Benefield and Bob Parks applicants. Notice of said public hearing was published in the September 8, 2013 issue of a local newspaper. Ms. Green?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Our next public hearing is for you to consider adopting an annexation plan of service and feasibility study for property located along Elam Road. The property is approximately 2.28 acres and is located along Elam Road and along the east side of Elam Road. The annexation study does include right-of-way of Elam Road, as shown in the pink area on the map on the screen. The area which is requested annexation is shown in blue on the screen. The property is contiguous with current existing city limits along its southern and eastern property lines. It is also located within the city's urban growth boundary, and it appears that all services can be extended upon the effective date of annexation in accordance with the plan of services. As a matter of fact, the property that it is contiguous with is currently receiving city services, and we'll be able to just extend those services to this property. The Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing and then afterward made a recommendation that the property is annexed according to the request made by the property owner. There is a companion zoning change request, which will be the discussion of our next public hearing, but the zoning change is not a part of this public hearing. So the public hearing you should conduct now is to consider the annexation of these properties. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Mr. Matt Taylor represents the applicant, and he's in the audience this evening. If you have any questions from him, he'd be most glad to answer those as well.
All right, Councilmember, you've heard the explanation. Do you have any questions of Ms. Green before I open the public hearing?
Ms. Green, I've got one real quick question. On the request, it's 2.28 acres, and on our agenda, it's 3.11 acres. And is the difference the additional land? Is that what we're looking at, just a little less than an acre there?
The difference is the right-of-way, which is 550 linear feet, but 0.83 acres, I believe.
Okay.
Okay.
So the total area includes the right-of-way.
Okay, so it's actually the 3.11.
It is.
Okay.
All right, council members. Thank you, Ms. Green. Since there are no questions, I declare the public hearing open. Come to the podium if you're for or against, and give us your name and address. Please, ma'am and sir. Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13-OA-41 to annex an area located along Elam Road and adopt for the same a plan of services.
Move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Smotherman.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Thank you. All right. Item 14, pursuant to Resolution 13-0Z-R-42, adopted by the City Council on August 22, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider zoning approximately 2.28 acres, that'd be right, located along Elam Road to single-family residential 8, RS8 district, simultaneous with annexation. Jerry Benefield and Bob Park applicants. Notice of said public hearing was published in the September 2013 issue of the local newspaper. Ms. Green.
Thank you, sir. This next public hearing is to consider changing the zone of the property, which we just considered for annexation, to change the zone to RS15 simultaneous with its annexation. The property, again, is located along Elam Road, and the subject property itself is 2.28 acres, and that does not include the right-of-way, which was being annexed. The property is also adjacent to the Summersby subdivision to the south and to the east. The RS8 district would allow this property to develop with lots with a minimum lot size of 8,000 square feet and with a minimum lot width of 55 feet. And it's our estimate that there could be approximately 6 to 7 lots developed on this property after services are provided to this property. The parcels will be able to receive city services according to the plan of services which you just adopted. The Planning Commission did recommend that this property be zoned to RS8 simultaneous with its annexation unanimously the night of the public hearing. Mr. Matt Taylor is representing the applicant. He's here this evening. He doesn't have a presentation, but he'd be glad to answer questions you may have. These lots will have frontage along Elam Road, and that will be where their driveways are. And there were some questions at the Planning Commission stage as to the driveway location, and make sure that we consider those driveways location on Elam Road, which is a county road but is a heavily traveled road. And so we'll definitely consider that and put some restrictions on driveway placements when the Planning Commission reviews the subdivision plats. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them either before or after the public hearing, but you should conduct a public hearing prior to making your decision.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Council members, do you have any questions of Ms. Green before I open the public hearing? If not, we'll open the public hearing and listen to those that are for or against this particular project or this particular proposal. Just give us your name and address when you come to the podium. And not all at once. All right, seeing none, I'll consider the public hearing closed, and we'll consider for passage on the first reading ordinance 13-0Z-42 to zone an area located along Elam Road to single-family residential 8 RS8 district.
So moved. Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Item 15, pursuant to Resolution 13-0A-R-43 adopted by the City Council on August 22, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider annexing approximately 272 acres located south of John Bragg Highway and consider for same a plan of services, University Villas, and Marshall Lines applicants. Notice of said public hearing was published in the September 8, 2013 issue of a local newspaper. Ms. Green.
Thank you, sir. Our next public hearing is to consider the adoption of a plan of services and feasibility study for 3 parcels located south of John Bragg Highway or Highway 70 South. The application is being made by the property owners, University Villas and Marshall Lyons, and all the property owners involved have requested that this annexation, that these properties be annexed. The annexation also includes approximately 1,856 linear feet of John Bragg Highway as it fronts the property. The owners, of course, have petitioned the city to annex the property so that they can benefit from city-provided services. This property may look somewhat familiar to you because earlier this year, the City Council considered and approved annexation petition for a portion of this property. That petition also included some additional properties not included in tonight's annexation in which the owners did not desire their property to be annexed. Subsequent to the Planning Commission's approval and City Council's consideration, after the second reading, the applicants asked to withdraw the application and to amend their application so that the properties being annexed include only those parcels for which the property owners desire their properties to be annexed. So to make it clear, the properties that are being considered for annexation tonight all have petitioned the city to annex the properties, and the family who wished to not be annexed is not included in this annexation study this evening. And that's the new petition, which is before you tonight, and that includes all the former land as well as some additional land. The land included in this annexation petition is contiguous with current city limits, and you can see that adjacent to the Aspen Heights site, which is labeled on the map. It is also located within the city's urban growth boundary. All property owners affected by this annexation have petitioned the city to annex the property. Included in your agenda materials is an annexation feasibility study and plan of services, which outlines the services that the city provides and in a time frame for when we will provide them. It is expected that the city can provide all services to the property upon the date of annexation and with the development of the property, with the exception of sanitary sewer service, which may not be available to the property in sufficient capacity to support the development of the property as proposed. The owners have had discussions with city staff to consider a possibility of an alternative means of sanitary waste treatment that may be necessary for the project, and that was something that was discussed with the previous annexation petition as well. The Planning Commission did consider this item, and their recommendation to you is for you to annex the properties as requested. That vote was unanimous with all 4 members who were present that evening. If you have any questions about this annexation, I'd be glad to answer them either before or after the public hearing. You should conduct a public hearing prior to making your decision regarding this annexation, and I'd be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Council members, do you have any questions of Ms. Green?
Ms. Green, one real quick question. How will services be provided to this property from the city? I'm looking at it here, and the services don't appear to go down Highway 70, and I was just curious as to how they're going to get them to.
So there are various services that the city provides, and some of those will be available immediately. In effect, if there are no children there, then there's no need for the school system, so there's no need to send the children to school. However, that is a service that we provide. The police will begin providing any kind of services to the property immediately. The fire and rescue department, of course, will. Street lighting is available and will extend it along John Bragg Highway when the property develops. It will become in the planning's jurisdiction immediately upon annexation. Building and Codes Department will enforce their regulations immediately upon annexation. The the highway, of course, is state highway, but the city will begin maintaining the state highway after this property is annexed, the portion that is located within the city. Sanitary sewer service is not available, and that's one of the services that we've outlined that isn't available. I'm not sure which service that you wanted us to discuss further.
Basically, I was asking about utilities and stuff as far as services, but I appreciate you being more detailed than even what I asked because it was good information. My question is there's an area of Highway 70 that is going to be jumped right there. Is that the Deal property? That's
There'll be
right
a
next
gap.
to
It is. It's the Deal property.
Would the city not have the responsibility of maintaining John Bragg Highway or Highway 70 there?
Not where there's the gap.
Okay.
It would be ideal to annex the entire property, but with the Deals not wanting to be a part of the application.
Okay, so they were opposed to it?
Yes.
Okay, all right. That's what I need to know. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
As far as the secondary sewer system, whether it be STEP or whatever they decide, will that be consolidated? Who will maintain that, or will that be Murfreesboro Water and Sewer who will be responsible for it?
It would be a first-case scenario for the city of Murfreesboro, so I don't have any history on that. I do know that we've spoke with Murfreesboro Water and Sewer Department, and I know that they've talked to our administration department, so I'm not sure what the final decision has been. But CUD does have STEP systems, and they do maintain it, not for anything inside the city of Murfreesboro. So I think it's something we'd have to look at our policies and procedures and determine that, but I really don't know.
We've had conversations with the proposed developer for a number of years on this very subject. There have been several different projects that have been contemplated for this property, and we have continued to point out that sanitary sewer was not going to be available to this and that they needed to explore alternative services. We have made that abundantly clear that there was not a cost-effective way for sanitary service to be extended here. So they're aware of that, and they've shaped their proposal around that. To that end, we've had conversations with CUD that should the first STEP system or alternative sewer system be developed inside the city limits, that we would look to CUD to maintain that. They currently maintain those sorts of systems outside the city. They currently have the staff and the equipment, and they're trained to do so. So if and when that should happen, that would be part of the approvals that we would come to you with an arrangement with CUD relative to maintenance.
I think that would be something that would be advantageous, not only to whether it be CUD but the city, that it be abundantly clear to the residents who move there that the city of Murfreesboro is not providing sewer service. So, and I don't know how we do that. But if the property's ever sold, that we have no responsibility as far as their waste, because that was my concern, that the city get into the STEP business when we're not equipped or have the knowledge to be able to do that.
Yes, sir, and that's why we wanted to take advantage of CUD's experience in this area.
Okay.
All right, is that all you have, Ms. Green? If not, thank you, Ms. Green. Does anybody in the audience have any issues for or against this particular proposal? If you do, come to the podium, give us your name and address. For or against? I know what you for.
Yes, sir. Once again, Kevin Gunther with Huddleston Steel. Good evening, Vice Mayor Washington, council members. Just want to let it be known, myself and Mr. Ray are here this evening requesting approval of this annexation. We understand if an alternative system is needed at the time of development, that's something that will have to be worked out in arrangement with the city and perhaps a district such as CUD. We respectfully ask for annexation approval this evening. I do want to point out this, the only difference between this and the previously approved annexation is a change in some of the property from the Dill property being removed because they did not want annexation. So we've added a parcel to the south and connected to the city through that route. That's the only change that we're proposing at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I am opening the public hearing. I thank you, Mr. Smallman, if I didn't. Thought I did, but anyone else? Anyone else? If not, I'll declare the public hearing closed. And we will consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13-0A-43 to annex an area located south of John Bragg Highway and adopt for the same a plan of services.
I would make a motion to approve, but also putting on the record, and I think we have, but that the city will not be providing sewer service or maintaining any secondary sewer service. Is that possible, Ms. McGinnis?
I suggest, Councilman, that it would be better to separate that and not make that part of the motion because we don't know when this will happen. I think if you want to make a separate motion to direct staff to take all appropriate measures to ensure that there's full disclosure of this, that would be appropriate, but I wouldn't blend the two.
Okay, perfect. Well, then I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye.
Would you like me to do that under new business or go ahead and do that now?
I would do it now.
Okay. I would just like to move that it be clear that whether future residents or future owners, that at this time the city doesn't have sewer and we are not advising to operate a secondary sewer system.
The city will not be operating.
Well, let's give some flexibility. It may be that Murfreesboro Water and Sewer want to do secondary sewer, a step system or some other method. I think it's that there is no representation that sanitary sewer service will be provided to this property, and the city is assuming no responsibility for provision of sanitary sewer service.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
I'm really interested in this project because it's going to be a challenge with that sewer. There's all kind of alternative systems, but this was going to be real interesting from my experience with them.
And that was my, we're getting ready to do a $37 million sewer plan extension. So we've got, I think, from the Water and Sewer Department, everything that we can handle right now, and trying to bring on a secondary option is tough.
And Mr. McFarland, we're glad to have that in the record. That's been very consistent with what staff has told the developer, that it just was not financially feasible for that to be extended at this time.
Okay.
All right, council members, item 16, pursuant to Resolution 13-OZ-R-44, adopted by the City Council on August 22, 2013, conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning approximately 1.64 acres located along the east side of Cason Lane from single-family residential 12 RS12 district to residential multifamily 16 RM district. Ms. Violet Ogino, applicant. Notice of said public hearing was published in the September 8, 2013 issue of a local newspaper. Ms. Green.
Thank you, sir. Our final public hearing this evening is for you to consider changing the zone of approximately 1.64 acres from its current RS12 zone, which is single-family residential district, to RM16, which is multifamily residential district, with a density of 16 dwelling units per acre. The property is located along the east side of Cason Lane and is owned by Ms. Violet Ogino, who is in the audience this evening. The property is located along the east side of Cason Lane, across from the intersection with Malon Drive. Property is undeveloped and is part of a larger tract to the south that is currently zoned RM16. The owner is making an application for the remaining portion of this property to be zoned RM16 to be in the same zoning classification as the remainder of the larger tract. And then I show a map that's zoomed out so you can see the entire parcel and the size of this property in relation to the entire parcel. The property was zoned RS12 in April 2003. At the same time, the property to the south was zoned RM16. This area was zoned RS12 at that time in part to act as a buffer between the anticipated multifamily development to the south and the single-family detached dwellings to the north. It was also considered at that time that it would be more in keeping with those subdivisions to have single-family dwellings on the 3 or 4 lots that could be developed along the street segment. And you can see that Sawmill Drive dead ends into this property, and that there is a turnout in Cason Lane which lines up with Sawmill Drive and Malon Drive. It's the city's expectation, and it has been since the area has developed, that the street connection of Sawmill Street to Cason Lane will be made with the development of this property. This property is in a somewhat unique situation because any potential developers of the site to the south, or potential RM16 developers, are not interested in acquiring this RS12 property because they can't develop it with the RM16 property to the south. And anybody interested in constructing single-family lots in this area they're not interested in buying this property because they would have to incur the cost of extending that street, Sawmill Street, through the property for those 3 or 4 lots that could possibly be located there. So the property owner, Ms. Ogino, is coming before you this evening to request that this 1.64 acre property be rezoned to be that similar zone of RM16 as the remainder of the property. With the future development, we will insist that the street connection be made. Ms. Ogino has, I think, a representative here this evening who'd like to introduce the project. If you have any questions regarding this, I'd be glad to answer them after the public hearing, but I'll go ahead and invite Mr. Chris Bratcher. I think he mentioned to me that, there you are, I didn't see him before I got up here, that he'd like to introduce the project, and the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Green. Good evening, Vice Mayor Washington and council members. I'm Chris Bratcher with Red Realty in Murfreesboro. I'm here tonight on behalf of Bill and Violet Ogino and Mr. Vaughn.
Name and address, sir.
Chris Bratcher, 522 Uptown Square.
Okay.
I'm here on behalf of Mr. and Ms. Ogino and Mr. Vaughn. As Ms. Green stated, that's the dilemma we've had several purchasers of this property, and the dilemma is that this little small remnant is still zoned residential. And the problem is the city is requiring the extension of Sawmill Drive to go through this property, and it's not feasible for any developer to develop it with having to bear the cost of that road to develop it as single family. So we feel like if this little small portion of the property was zoned contiguous to RM16, that the future developer of the RM16 property could bear the cost of extending Sawmill Drive and incorporate this in the future plans, because that's been the hurdle that we could not get past over several different buyers of the property. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Councilmember, any questions for Mr. Bratcher? Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
With that said, I will now open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this project, come to the podium, give us your name and address. All righty then, I declare the public hearing open. Councilman, what's your pleasure?
Move for approval.
Wait a minute. Consider for passage on first reading ordinance 13.OZ.44 to rezone an area located along the east side of Case Lane to residential multifamily 16 RM16 district. Now.
Move for approval. Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gills Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Item 17, consider the recommendation of the Old Ford Golf Commission to name the new short 6-hole course Bloomfield Links.
Good evening, Vice
Welcome.
Mayor, Washington, members of council. First of all, I just want to say thank you on behalf of the staff at Old Ford, the Golf Commission, and the future golfers that we're going to create on this site. It is getting really exciting. We are near completion, growth of grass and everything on this property, and we're getting really close to opening, hopefully the middle of next month. I come to you tonight with a recommendation from the Golf Commission, our junior committee, and staff for the naming of this facility of Bloomfield Links. And I'd like to take just a quick moment to kind of give you a touch of history on where that came from, because it came to us in such a unique way. We had a junior committee established, and we came up with several different names, and we tried to study the history of the property and all the things that go with Murfreesboro and all the names that were possible, and they came up with some great ones, but we just never could settle on one. And one day one of our golfers came in and was telling us a story about his wife purchasing a milk bottle with Bloomfield Dairies on the bottle, and after research of that, and it came to him from his wife that's Mr. Davenport and his wife Diane, but how the story came about and how this project came about, it just seemed to fit beautifully. But it was some history that seemed to have been lost in our city, and it was tied to this piece of property. The old fire training station that was across 96 from the golf course is where the old home place used to be. The city now owns that property, and it was called Bloomfield Acres and Bloomfield Dairies later on. But the property was actually part of the golf course, Old Fort Park, and also Fortress Rosecrans. It backs up right to Lido Creek. The history of this naming goes all the way back to Charlottesville, Virginia, and pre-Civil War, actually. And I'm going to try to go through it really quickly, but the city bought it from the family by the name of Bills. This is Ms. Bills and I believe one of her granddaughters in front of this home. And in front of the home, they had planted 8 acres of jonquil flowers and 27 different varieties that they sold to different florists across the country, from San Francisco to Chicago. And if you go back even prior to that, the home was owned by the Ordways, and they were married into the Braun family, which was from Virginia. And it goes all the way back to a federally funded school system pre-Civil War, to where it was called Bloomfield Academy. It was a classic education for young men and boys, and that it's still in different states across the country. It's not there in Charlottesville anymore. But when the young ladies, the family reunited, Mr. Braun was a professor at Virginia, and that's when his daughter met up with one of the Ordway boys, and they got together, and she wanted to preserve the name, so they called it Bloomfield Acres. And then there were some flowers planted. There's all the way back to the history of, it's called a whistle stop, Cumberland Whistle Stop, that was near Murfreesboro, that a lady planted these flowers at one time just to beautify the place. And they liked it so much, they started it at their home. And then when Ms. Bills took over, she planted 8 acres of it in front of her home. People used to drive for miles around just to take pictures of this, and it was called the Bloomfield, and it's full of these jonquils. So we thought, because of we went and we were asking a lot of different people that had been here, even Mr. Allen, who's been around for a couple years and very familiar with the property. He knew the family very well, but he wasn't familiar with the naming. So we just felt, because of the uniqueness of this property and how it's going to influence children, the uniqueness of the history and how far it goes back, the name of actual Bloomfield, and what we're hoping to do with young children and people introducing them to the game, that Bloomfield and blossoming of lives just seem to go together. So we felt like we were accomplishing several different things. One of the things you're seeing now, we've already been able to use the property from a community service standpoint. We had 3 of the 6th grade classes out from Hobgood Elementary last week, just helping us with a little cleanup, more rocks and sticks and things, and we're just doing a final cleanup there. But they have to do community service projects. A couple of our golfers, one of our golfers, Mr. Chick Knitter, is a teacher there, and he helped coordinate with us. They needed a project. We needed some help, and they came out on Tuesday, and we had 44 kids out there helping us with it. So I already feel like we're making a difference there and influencing the lives of kids, and we hadn't even started the golf programming yet. So the recommendation to you tonight is for the naming of the golf course to be Bloomfield Links.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. Do any council members have any questions of Tracy Wilkins?
And this all came about because Diane West was shopping at a yard sale and found a bottle with Bloomfield Dairies on it.
Bought a milk bottle, and her husband was in telling the story, and we had gone over names. I was sitting in my office and just happened to hear him telling the story to one of our employees, and I said, well, hang on a minute, this is good. And from that point on, we started doing research, and his wife, Diane, did tons of research on this, and that's how it got all the way back to what I just told you. It started out around a milk bottle, and she was excited about it just because once she got to looking into it in the history of Murfreesboro, but the fact that it tied into the golf course that her husband played, she got really excited, and it's just all fitting together for us. We're excited.
Well, I'm personal friends with Roy and Diane, and I think they're two of the finest citizens we have in Murfreesboro, and I think it's an excellent name and would move for passage.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you. Again, we're hoping that to get open sometime in the middle of next month. If everything works, information will be coming that way as soon as we have a date finalized.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 18, consider recommendations of the Chief of Police with regards to approval of a contract for a feasibility study and space needs analysis for the Police Department headquarters relocation to 1004 North Highland Avenue. Good evening, Chief Crispin.
Mr. Vice Mayor, good evening, and members of council. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. We have for your consideration tonight a contract between Kennan Calhoun Workshop and a number of associates that have been associated with them for this project that we're proposing. There are three that are included in your package of materials: McLaren, Wilson, and Lowry, a public safety architectural design firm; Envision Advantage, the mechanical engineers that would be engaged to work with us on this project, as well as EMC, the structural engineers that are part of this proposed project. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, as you may know, or I know you know very well, as we worked with city management, we had made projections in our capital improvement budget for the next several years to look at the construction of a new police headquarters facility. Toward that end, there were monies that had been projected for a needs analysis, architectural engineering, and finally, in the third year of that process, a significant investment for the purchase of a new police headquarters building that was projected at 125,000 square feet. To the great credit of our city manager and our assistant city manager and all of you, our attention was directed to the property at 1004 North Highland Avenue, the old Murfreesboro Medical Clinic property, a few weeks ago. That building, as it sits, is 125,000 square feet. It has roughly 400 surface parking spaces. It's centrally located, great ingress, egress, and I think all of us are always interested in trying to find a way to reclaim and reuse vacant properties. Certainly that property has been vacated as all of those facilities moved to Medical Center Parkway. So we were able to take a look at that building. Mr. Crumley, Mr. Lyons, the mayor went with us. We have toured the building to some degree. We feel like that there's some tremendous potential in that building, tremendous potential for development to build that facility into a first-class police facility for the future generations of Murfreesboro, and to do that in such a way that it will be economically feasible and result in not only great facilities for the future of our police department and our city as it grows, but also to do that in a fiscally responsible way, in a green way, to reuse a building that's already there, and certainly we're excited about the potential of that. As a part of our due diligence in looking at the feasibility of that building, we need to do several things. Certainly a mechanical and structural engineering review is warranted, as is a significant evaluation as to the use of the space that exists in that building, and in our ability to reprogram that space as we look toward the future of what a modern police facility would require. A little bit about the people that we have put before you tonight. Kennan Calhoun Workshop and James Kennan were the lead architects in the design and construction of the Franklin Police Building. That building was built and occupied within about the last 4 years at a cost of $38 million. I think they spent $10 million on the site and $28 million on the construction of the building. It's about 100,000 feet, and it is probably the newest, most state-of-the-art municipal police facility in the Middle Tennessee area. Mr. Kennon oversaw that project, and my dear friend and colleague Jackie Moore was the police chief over there, and he spoke volumes about the work that Mr. Kennon did and what a joy he was to work with. He employed the services of a design group, McLaren, Wilson, and Lowry, NWL. They're located in Phoenix. They have designed police facilities and public safety facilities all over this country, have done a tremendous amount of work for the state of Tennessee. They were one of the lead designers that contributed to the design of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation headquarters. They've designed crime laboratories all over the country, including the FBI's National Forensic Laboratory in Washington. They are, I think, an outstanding consultant, not only to help us decide the programmatic use of the space if the building is deemed to be usable for our future needs, but I think they'll bring a cutting-edge kind of a view towards what a contemporary design and the allocation of that interior space should be. The other people that would be on board if you approve this contract, EMC Structural Engineering. If you look in their body of work, you'll notice that they have been engaged as we speak to do some significant structural engineering work for the Metropolitan Police Department as they are in the process of building their crime laboratory. EMC has done a good deal of the engineering work as they have retrofitted and built police precincts in the Nashville area, as well as some other places across the mid-state. We believe this will be a great team to help us perform the due diligence on the 1004 North Highland property, so that within 60 to 75 days, if those studies bear out that this facility is in fact feasible, desirable, and indicated, that we'd be able to bring a recommendation back to the council prior to the end of the year and one way or another move forward with purchase of this property, or if the study heads us in the other way, decline that offer. So what we're asking tonight, Mr. Vice Mayor, is for the council's approval to enter into a contract with Kennon Calhoun Workshop. This initial contract is in the amount of $39,905, I think, $39,405. That would be funded from unforeseen if you approve this. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions of Chief Chrisman, council member? Do you have any comments, Rob?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to what the chief said. This really appears to be a very unique opportunity. We know the police department, which is located in the police building, the Hargrove building, the annex, and rental space out on South Rutherford really is needing room and a more efficient workflow. The monies we've programmed in the 5-year CIP are substantial, and this may be a way for us to save the public a good deal of money, quicken up the ability for the police department to get in more efficient space. And then there becomes all the secondary benefits. We know we've got space needs at City Hall, the library, the Parks and Recreation Department, and the asset that we own at 302 South Church Street, which is the main police building, then could be available for some of those uses. So this really does get to be an exciting opportunity as we've continued to take a look at it. The ability to bring that building back into use in a part of town with police presence, I think, is certainly another benefit. So we see multiple opportunities here, but we want to do what we always do, and that's to do our homework and to analyze this to see if it really is going to be what the police department's going to need, because this would be a many-year investment for our police department. We want to make sure it's the right building, right location, and so we think we've assembled a very good team to bring back information to us so we can make an informed decision.
Thank you, Rob. Any council members, any comments or questions before? If there are none, what do you want to do with the recommendation?
Move for approval.
Second. Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington.
Aye. Good luck, Glenn.
Thank you very much, sir.
Item 19, consider recommendations of the city manager regarding a proposed amendment to the agreement with Carolyn and Terry Haynes dated July 18, 2005, to repay the city for the extension of Kings Ridge Drive to Memorial Boulevard.
With the council's permission, I'd actually like to bring this back to you next week. We were working on the agenda materials that didn't make it into the packet, and I'd like to get that to you next week. We will meet next week, so I'll reschedule this for next week.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Mrs. Wright, your turn. Beer permits.
I do have two tonight. We have a request for an ownership change at Buster's Place on Broad Street. They have met our background requirements, but we are still waiting for them to finish codes. I've heard they may have finished those today, but I don't have the paperwork yet. And then we also have a restaurant coming at 1935 South Church Street, which would be an ownership change and a name change. And again, we've gotten back the background check, but we are waiting for them to complete codes. So I would like to issue those permits once I get approval from our codes department.
All right, council members, what's your pleasure?
Move for approval. Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye. I want to also say there was a nice picture of you and Dawn at the National Exchange Club. Her husband is the national president of the Exchange Club for this year. And I got my Exchange Club magazine, and I said, I know that lady right there. And that was a good picture from this.
Thank you.
Payment of the statement.
I move we pay the bills.
Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye. I don't see any board and commission appointments, other business from staff or the city council. I think you have something.
I did have one item, Vice Mayor. I would request that the council set a joint workshop at the Murfreesboro Electric Department for Thursday, November the 7th at 5 p.m. I don't believe the Power Board and City Council have ever had a joint session, so we think this, Mr. Sachs and I had talked about that. I know there's one issue in particular we may put on your agenda, but I would request that you set a November 7th meeting at 5 p.m. with the MED Board, Power Board.
Location.
Is it 218?
Okay, 218. Okay.
I'd like a vote to hold a special meeting.
Oh, sure.
Move to approve special meeting. Second.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Washington?
Aye.
What time was that, Rob?
5.
5. Okay.
November 7th.
Okay. If there's no other business, okay, Mr. Smotherman.
I know MTSU plays tomorrow night in football, and the following week, I think they'll be celebrating homecoming. And Shannon, if you would kind of inform us on any ideas you might have about painting the city blue next Friday.
Yes, the MTSU is encouraging everyone for True Blue Friday for next week to wear your MTSU blue and support our Blue Raiders. So we encourage everyone to show their true colors next Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Go blue.
Thank you, Mr. Smotherman. Look like you're ahead of when all the blue you got on tonight. Mr. McFarland.
And you can't see he's got blue shoes on, too.
Okay.
We all received an email from Tom Reed with Wiser Company, and I just wanted to, as with anyone that sends us an email, we forward that to staff, and I was just wanting to see how the research on what Mr. Reed was asking and get a legal opinion, or just let us sort of as a council be able to discuss that, please.
Okay. Rutherford County is getting ready to seek proposals for firms to do their GIS mapping. That includes the aerial photography and the orthometrics. Mr. Reed had pointed out that currently Rutherford County's document did not require a residency for the subcontractors. The county's bid specification or request for proposal stated that a proposer needed to identify subcontractors and whether they were located offshore or not. Mr. Reed had sent a letter to the city asking that we consider approving a position or a resolution stating that we would prefer that the subcontractors not be offshore, that they be American firms. Gannon had contacted Mr. Reed to make sure that such a requirement would not become a sole source condition. Mr. Reed assured us that there are multiple firms that would be able to use American subcontractors for the Rutherford County mapping project. I would point out the city does fund, we're all joint partners on the GIS system. And so in response to Mr. McFarland's question, we did draft a resolution should you wish to
So explain what
consider
the,
that.
so the residents know, explain what the mapping is.
Yes.
I guess that'd be
We use GIS. It's an everyday tool for the city. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems.
Right.
So if you want to think about it as layers, there's multiple layers that get tied together. There'll be a layer of aerial photography, a layer of streets, a layer of property ownership, a layer of water lines, sewer lines, streets, et cetera. This becomes a very useful tool, not only for staff, but the design community, and for that matter, for residents. It's available on the city's website. It's available on the county's website. So you can do quite a deal of research, and it becomes a very useful tool.
okay. And that data is collected how?
Through the aerial photography, and then the computer, the firm that's selected then actually begins to reconcile and stitch all those layers together so that if you looked at 111 West Vine Street, which is the location of City Hall, that all of that layered information trues up and is accurate.
Okay. So he's asking us that his preference is that would be as opposed to the mapping that's done, that's done by an onshore company as opposed to an offshore company.
That was his request, yes, sir.
Okay.
It gets satisfied.
Yeah, that's that. And
It's reasonable to me. It's reasonable, sounds reasonable. I hadn't thought much about it, but sounds reasonable to me.
Is this important? We need to go ahead and we're ready to.
What's the pleasure of the council members?
I didn't see that.
I didn't see.
Yeah, there was a resolution that we drafted that we put on the dais. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on pointing that out, Mr. McFarland.
But this decision is really made by the county.
Yes, sir. And I had asked Mayor Burgess about that today.
Okay.
He said that they had considered it, but they asked the contractors who would be submitting to identify who their subs were and the location of those subcontractors. But the request does not put any additional weight. It's merely an identification and information only.
Okay.
Councilman, what's your pleasure? Do you want to wait? We're going to meet next week. So what do you think, Susan?
The county was doing a multi-step process. The submittal of qualifications was necessary to qualify somebody to then submit a proposal. I believe their deadline for submittal of qualifications would be the day of or the next council meeting. So and we brought it to you to give you an option. It's certainly they will not be entering into a contract by the time of your next council meeting, so you may wish to think about it, and we could simply modify the language if we miss the first of several deadlines for them to make a change.
I think that would be a good, now that we have some information on it and have discussed it, then we as council members can think on that and decide what to do at the next council meeting.
Modify it accordingly.
Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. That sounds good to me. So we'll do just that. Is there any other business to come before the council? Your adjourned.